your service on the battlefield and beyond. 3 Bravo.
All right, what's going on, everybody? I'm Liam Cogan. This is the 3 Bravo podcast, and today we're going to be doing a military veteran news breakdown. It's the month of June. Tons of things are happening in the military veteran news space, so I'm going to jump right into it. But the first thing I want to do is I want to address something that I missed last week. I wanted to talk briefly about Soft Week in Tampa. So if you're in the military, like if you're active duty, you might not even know what this Soft Week in Tampa is. But if you've gotten out and you've gotten into the private sector at all, contracting or whatever level of defense, you definitely know what this is. Soft Week is basically just a big get together where some former military and a lot of tech millionaires get together and try to get in front of like 5 people. Okay, so they hold this whole multi-million dollar event in Tampa. And the entire point of this whole week is for all these different software companies to network with people, right? Software, hardware, whatever it is. And they want to network with one kind of person called a PEO. PEOs are basically the single point of failure in our whole testing and evaluation system for all military gear, all contracts. Like, they are this ridiculously powerful, way too deeply ingrained into civilian politics position that basically has the power to give a go, no go on a software, like a new software, new hardware. So if you're familiar with the military, you know we use radios. If you're familiar with the military, you know we use drones now. We use guns. All these kinds of things are contracted out through the military. And for those contracts to be approved, you have to go through a PEO. And a PEO, project executive officer, is going to be kind of just hoard around during these events to dinners, luncheons, all these different things. And all these companies are paying to get their time. They're vying for, a few guys' time. So at Soft Week, the original idea was that you have all these military veterans together, okay, and they're selling products and you're furthering kind of like the defense industry with a lot of PEO type people, right? Like folks who have influence inside the military. You're going to see a lot of people in camis going to a lot of booths and trying out different things so they can therein go talk to the PEO, or they can influence in their own program, talk about it, and further that private company's kind of goals and mission. What has happened to Soft Week in recent years is it's kind of just turned into all industry. So it's just like all these tech people coming to a conference in Tampa, getting hammered and having fun. That is so lame to literally build an industry around war that we go and fight. Okay. Like the pain and suffering of actual veterans, heroes, and you build this industry around it, and then the biggest event of the year, you just decide, you know what, fuck it, let's just turn it into a rager for non-military people. Now, don't get me wrong, there's still military people there, but in the years past, it has just turned into basically like you see a couple guys in camis or whatever, active duty people working that day, going and testing and evaluating different things and talking to different people, networking and making connections to further the military industrial complex agenda from the inside, from the military standpoint. It has gone from seeing a lot of those folks to a few of them and just a bunch of people getting cocktails at noon for free, and then going out and raging all weekend. A bunch of different exclusive parties, fundraisers, and events. Listen, I get it. Everything spins out of control, but if you have any influence over there, dial it in. So I think from now on, I'll be calling it soft. So Soft Week literally is Special Operations Forces Week. Where's the soft? So from now on, we're going to call it SOF, SOF, and then lowercase t, Soft Week. And that lowercase T stands for tactical. So it's just Special Operations Forces Tactical Week. And, Soft Week can be as soft as they feel like continuing to make it without including, the point of the business, which is involving SOF veterans in the program and getting them to test and evaluate equipment, not just talking to 5 project executive officers and sucking them dry until they approve your contract bid. And unfortunately, that's a big story in the news that's been happening all over the place, and it's been happening for a very long time, is that these PEOs have massive sway inside of this military industrial complex infrastructure. And so it really just turns into hundreds of companies trying to meet with like 30 people across the United States, 30 PEOs or their, immediate circle, and blowing them, taking them out to dinner, taking them out to golf, smoking cigars, drinking whiskey. So it's turned into this weird thing where you have a military person with this unbelievable amount of control and influence, and that's not good in the civilian sector. And you ask why? Military people have more integrity. Maybe that'd be a good thing. No, it's not a good thing, because the military is not always designed to elevate the best person for the job. Sometimes it's the best ass kisser that makes their way up the chain. And if you get a great ass kisser in a position where everyone is kissing their ass, what happens? Oh, I don't know. Stupid shit, bad gear, bad contracts, bad calls. For example, there is a military comms project that was hired and paid for I think a few $1 billion over a span of 5 years to get some degree of software into military computers. And guess what? It just didn't happen. Wonder why. And they get that money. There's no like part of the contract where it's like, well, if you fail, it means we're going to go with someone else. It doesn't mean if you fail, we're going to go arrest you and get all our money back. So weird world if you weren't privy to it. Weird way to start the show. Bit of a rant, but I think it's important for everyone to understand, because if you think about the military and you think about the civilian world with all the things that are going on with tech, where it seems like our military wants to, size down the force and reinforce tech sales, which, CEOs like, whatever his name is, Lucky Hooper and Hopper. What the hell is this guy's name? I have it written down. You're not getting away from me, buddy boy. Palmer Luckey and, Mark Zuckerberg are literally trying to create, like autonomous warfare. And so if we keep moving in that direction, how much power do these PEOs have? Way too much. So, hey, Soft Week, instead of being Soft Week, bring it back to Soft Week and bring in some fucking operators. Do the right thing. I mean, literally T&E gear. Do what you're supposed to do, not just do tech sales to 5 guys that live in Tampa. Lame. So moving into policy benefits and legislative updates, these are the things that the veterans want to hear, the military people want to hear. I get that. Sometimes I just got to go off on something that I don't like. And there it was. So right now, as we've talked about every single week since the Trump administration has started, benefit cuts are being talked about. This time they're being talked about in a big way. So if you know anything about this show or you know anything about the VA, currently Doug Collins, and he has said this since the beginning of his appointment with the new administration, that Doug Collins is the Secretary of the VA. He has said, we are not cutting veterans' benefits. However, it is a government mandate that they downsize. So they are cutting employees, and 14,000 employees took the incentive to leave. Okay, so basically, if you weren't tracking, they had an incentive to leave, which was basically if you don't want to come back physically into the office, and or you were part of a DEI initiative, which no longer has a place in the office, you can take basically your leave and you can leave this position on good terms. Otherwise, you're going to come back, and if you're not doing your job, you're getting fired. So 14,000 people took the incentive to leave, and this has basically sparked outrage within the veteran community, which I think is there's two ways to look at this, and it is rightly so. Okay. Veterans need to march on DC. Veterans need to let it be known that we will not take shit from anybody. And if you're trying to come after our benefits, if you're trying to come after the benefit structure, you're wrong. We're going to come after you. We're going to make our voices be heard. And they're doing that. So this month in June, veterans will be marching on DC to the Washington National Mall. Is that the name? The DC Mall? DC National Mall. God bless. They're going to be marching down to DC, making their voices heard, protesting en masse. And it's a good thing, okay? Like, we need to let them know that we're not to be trampled. However, this is something that I want everyone to have in the back of their minds, because there's two sides to this coin, and there's always going to be two sides to every coin when you're talking about anything American politic. But this one specifically, and the two sides might not be what you're thinking. For me personally, the way I'm looking at veterans is like, yes, get out there, make your voices heard. I'll march with you. I'll show up with you. I'll talk with you. But the flip side of that coin is basically understand this. These cuts, they're coming. Okay. The service is going to dip. And like with many big businesses, when cuts come, service initially dips, no matter what it is. And then there's an uptick because people need to pick up the slack or they'll lose their jobs. So generally speaking, there is a degree of balance. Now, if during that that brief downtime, something traumatic happens to your family, that's why it's worth marching on DC for. Now, the other thing to understand, and this is the flip side of the coin, is that I don't want veterans to be completely bent out of shape over this. We deal with a different degree of mental stress because of PTSD, TBI, emotional issues, things like that. Don't let this bend you completely out of shape. Go rally with your brothers and sisters, walk, march on DC, and use it as a moment for camaraderie, to build healthy relationships, to, excel mental health as a group. And then let your voices be heard, like a truly peaceful and powerful protest. And I think that's what it has the power to be. That's a good thing. Okay. Because when we're looking at this, these are mandatory cuts. They're cutting basically a lot of the jobs that were built to support the PACT Act coming out in 2022. Because we had so many people coming through the system all at once. So we had to hire a lot of people to facilitate that infrastructure boom, or excuse me, that user boom. So they had to facilitate with a larger infrastructure. And so taking away a lot of these jobs might just bring it back to what it was. And what it was pre-PACT Act also sucked. So the real thing that we need to look at is, how are we going to really change the level of care? How are we really going to change how the system works? And marching lets them know that we're united, we're going to be heard, and we won't accept anything but the best. So enjoy the march, power to you, and let's make some changes. Let's figure out what we want. Okay, and I'm going to talk a little bit about what I've got going on at the end of the episode, which I generally don't do, but it's in the same breath. So something I want to talk about kind of on the same breath as this like PACT Act boom, and then now they're cutting it away, is there's a benefit expansion. So I talked about this last week as well with ACEs, which is basically, gosh, I'm going to forget all the acronyms because I have trouble word finding. Go figure, TBIs. But ACEs is for air crew of any degree that were exposed to toxic chemicals like jet fuel. We know for certain that these chemicals and jet fuels and things like that you find as an air crewman or a pilot or anyone who's working on planes at all, mechanic, your flight crew, you're going to be exposed to dangerous chemicals, and we know that they're linked to cancer. So they opened those up. They did that maybe 2 weeks ago. Now, what they're doing now is they've opened up an expansion to the presumptive causes clause of the PACT Act. The PACT Act basically built in more presumptive clauses, like if you were on this base and you had this water at this time, you're eligible for benefits now. If you were exposed to Agent Orange, you're eligible for benefits now. If you were exposed to burn pits on this base at this time, you're eligible for benefits. And they can look at that in your service record. If you deployed to this area and you have that exposure, you're going to be squared away. They're going to let you get into the VA, get seen for everything that has to deal with it, and they're going to elevate whatever, they're going to get that inside your service record, your medical record, so that your service is connected to it. So if anything happens in the future, if anything's happening now, or if anything happened in the past, they're liable for compensation. So now we have another presumptive cause going to anyone who was based on K2. Okay, so the K2 base is like an old Russian turnover base that we took. I believe it was in Afghanistan. I can't remember. And there's like black sludge, jet fuel, radiation coming out of K2. If you were ever based on K2, the air base, you now have the opportunity to go to the VA, let them know that you were there, or find out if it's in your service record and why it isn't. Right. Listen, if anything isn't in your service record that needs to be, you write a letter to whatever team, group, squadron you were at, and you say, hey, I was here from this time to this time. I can corroborate with this guy and this guy, get letters from them and say, I need you to write me on your professional letterhead that I was on this deployment at this time in this space. That's how you start that fight. You can look for your service record to be fully filled out somewhere else, but as we all know, admin is admin, so I wouldn't expect it, and I would just start doing step 2, building fidelity, letting them know that you were there, building a story, building a case. If you're on K2 and it's in your service record already, go to the VA, tell them that you were at that base, K2 Air Base, and you were likely exposed to radiation, black sludge, jet fuel, whatever was on that base. There's tons of it. Get that in your record, because when you get cancer, you don't want to be walking around cancerously sick and trying to do all this admin bullshit. So get it done now. If it ever happens, God forbid, you can just walk in the VA and say, well, look, you guys screwed me over. Time to fork over the dough and start paying for this treatment. So in judicial and financial news, kind of taking a pivot from that. Oh, wait, you know what? Excuse me. I want to go back to some of the policy and legislative changes. So people have been upset. I've been seeing, at least. And listen, I read headlines. Okay, so I read plenty of articles, but I read the headlines first. We all do. If you don't read the headline and you just blindly read shit, who are you? So I've gotten the feeling that people are upset with Trump for stonewalling Iran. So he has a team in Iran trying to negotiate deals, and Trump is basically back in the States negating whatever deal they made and saying no. He's claiming that he's doing that, and I'm not super knowledgeable on this, but from what I understand, he's claiming that he's doing that because he does not want them to establish uranium enrichment. So if you're not tracking, uranium enrichment is basically the process in which you take uranium and you make it from this unstable isotope, and then you take it and you do enriching, whatever. I mean, if I knew exactly how to do it, I wouldn't be on this podcast. I'd be rich. You enrich it, and you can use it for nuclear power, and you can also use it for nuclear war. So the reason he's not letting them have that is because he doesn't want a world power that absolutely hates America to have, nuclear capabilities. And if you think that's unfair, and, America is like inserting itself into foreign politics in a way that they shouldn't, understand this. The Muslim way, or the Muslim ideology, supports the full-on God, I'm going to forget this word too now. It's a rough day. But they full-on are committed to erasing all American people, okay? The eradication of the American people. And I understand there are tons of Muslims who don't want to do that. But the fact that there's like a large percent that do, it's concerning. So, and if you don't agree with that, I mean, in very unrelated news, there was a Muslim man who tried to burn a bunch of Americans with Molotov cocktails this week in Boulder, Colorado, and then he wanted to burn himself as a martyr after he committed the heinous act. The only reason he didn't kill all of these people, he says, he had tons of Molotov cocktails that he didn't use. The only reason he didn't kill them all is because he got scared and he never killed anybody before. And then they thought, oh, maybe this guy's got a conscience. And then he said, no, I would do it again. And I wish I would have done more. I was just too scared. So wildly honest, totally insane person. However, he's insane and has the gumption to commit that kind of heinous act. And it happens, semi-frequently. Do we not remember New Year's? And if you don't, a guy drove a car killing a bunch of people through New Orleans, and ISIS driving around with an ISIS flag. So listen, this isn't a far-fetched thing. You remember 9/11? It is just a fact of matter. So I support them not enriching uranium. That's kind of what I'm getting at. So in judicial and financial news, something that we need to totally wrap our heads around at some point. Like if we're going to do 4 years of not understanding why people are getting deported, I'm just so bored of it, right? The only thing that is incomprehensible is to say that someone doing something illegal is fine because that's the way I feel. Okay, so people doing illegal border crossings and in the country illegally, to say to yourself, like, it's how I feel that they should be treated. We don't have to vote on it. We don't have to all agree. It's how I feel, so that's the way it should be. That's fucking stupid. So, good luck rationalizing that way for the rest of your life, because living in America will be very difficult for you because we have to choose. We have to vote on stuff. We have to vote on people who decide stuff. And if you think to the point of tears and screaming that it should just be the way you feel all the time, you are dumb. And on that breath, if you think being in the military and getting married to someone who doesn't have an up-to-date visa is like some excuse or some like ominous, like you joined the military, so we're going to let you break the laws, you're dumb too. Because God bless, like if I didn't have more anxiety every day being in the military than I ever had being out because I was afraid to break the new rules that we have, what makes you think you can get in and break the old ones? So yes, if your wife or husband, this has been wife number 2 now in Hawaii, is being deported and you're an active duty military member, yeah, that's what's going to happen when you break the rules. Like you should be on top of this. You should tell your wife. So unfortunately in this recent case, she was pretty hot. And that has led this guy to say out loud when he gets out, he is going to expatriate for her. So, and she is hot. So, enjoy Thailand or wherever you're going to, buddy. Hopefully it's not the Middle East because they're not going to like you there. Another story that I kind of wanted to just go into, and this is like, as far as judicial news, this is just people being turds, but ex-wife of a soldier who's not being named, rightly so, in death. Miranda Briggs collected his death benefit, for years to the tune of $140,000. She runs a nonprofit called Fighting the War Within. So what she did is basically her husband, before he died, he divorced her and made sure that the VA knew he didn't want her to get any of his death benefit. She must have really sucked. And then he died and she got it anyways. So she went and made a case and said, no, he never said that. You guys are wrong. And you're keeping me from my death benefit of my husband, who I love so much. I had an ex-girlfriend that I feel would have done this. And then not only does she start collecting his death benefit for years, but she starts a nonprofit called Fighting the War Within. It is insane how many nonprofits do not do what they say they're going to do and are run by completely disingenuous, self-absorbed people. I don't understand how you could start. Like, why does the nonprofit sphere invite nefarious activity? Why wouldn't you just do what you were supposed to do? If you wanted to make money, go do something for profit. Like, if you had the drive to do something for a nonprofit, which is a lot of work, why not just go do something for profit and make money? Weird. So, moving on to some cool military news. I'm not going to get too far into this because we talked about it a few times, but the Harry S. Truman Strike Group is finally heading home after an extended deployment, and they sent the largest airstrike in the history of the world. That's pretty sick. Just being in contested seas, sending a lot of rockets. It looks like the Navy has gotten at least a little bump in combat experience, which is super, super solid. That's going to pay dividends in the long run, especially if China wants to make a bid to be the world superpower of the seas and take over, Uncle Sam's boating industry, because Uncle Sam's boating industry does not take kindly to competition. So getting some, and we lost what was it? Two jets fell off, the two jets fell off the tarmac, or what do you call it on the aircraft carrier? The deck. What is it called though? God dang it. Whatever. Two aircraft carriers fall off the deck and fall into the water. So just a couple $100 million mistake once or twice. And then we shot one down. So really there were some cobwebs to shake off, and we've shaken them off, and we're probably experiencing this period where we go from like DEI leadership back into war-centric leadership. So a lot of the leniency is going to go away. And I'll tell you this from firsthand experience. When you think like leniency in the military is going away and that's going to be really stressful for the soldiers, it's not. And I'll tell you why. And this is from my own experience. I was a shit little sailor, okay? I wanted to drink all the time and party, and I wanted to talk to girls, and then I wanted to show up half drunk, half cocked, and get the job done. And I did almost all of the time, but you're living in a world where almost all of the time it makes you an absolute moron. So as a young sailor, I was just a liability, which sucks, but it's the truth. And when you look at an atmosphere where they're keeping you dialed, like focused, like, hey, haircuts, shaves, on time, like where there's no room for horsing around, it gives you the peace of mind to just know, well, at least fuck it. Like, I'm not making a mistake right now, so I don't have to think about anything. I'm just doing what I'm supposed to do. So tightening that war fist on our nation's military will be a good thing for everybody. It's a mental relief. There's no wiggle room. You're just getting squared away. Now, I want to start talking about a segment that I'm going to be doing in these news weeks. Kind of goes along with Soft Week, which is why I did such a long intro into what that is the defense tech world. Okay, so a lot of people are interested in defense tech. That's not why I'm doing this. I think it is a world that folks on the outside don't generally understand. So you have a lot of tech guys and a lot of people who work in tech and military people, and they understand it, and no one else does. So I'm going to start reading into it because this is where a lot of our nation's money is going. A lot of it. It is a massive, massive industry. And when you see companies like Meta getting into it now, it's going to be this big pivot in how we start funding different things, right? I mean, throughout all of our country's history, we've innovated through military. Now we have this kind of weird sphere where instead of like wartime innovations are going to be leading the way, like we can innovate through the defense tech industry without needing war. Like we're going to be spending more money on research for things that can affect the whole world through the defense tech industry very regularly. So there doesn't have to really be a cause anymore. So the Navy, and this is going back into the PEO sphere. If you remember, that's the Project Executive Officer sphere. These are the guys who are getting paid. Well, they're not getting paid all the money. Or are they? In the Navy, you can't expect, or in the military, if you're, working one of these roles, you obviously can't accept gifts. You can't accept gifts or promises of future gifts. It is against the code of conduct. Now, a lot of these PEOs, for some reason, get in some trouble. with this. The Navy relieved Rear Admiral Kevin Smith. He was the PEO for Navy Unmanned Systems. If you don't know what a PEO is or does, they basically are the final point of approval for any new defense tech. So if any of these billion-dollar tech companies are hiring these, are selling anything, right? They're winning any contracts, they have to go through these guys. Another. So this is like the third in the year of these PEOs has gotten in trouble. Now, this guy's getting in trouble while working as a PEO. So he wasn't as crafty as the last guy I talked about. I forget his name. Robert Burke, who basically got in trouble later on for wheeling and dealing, selling contracts, and then working for way too many of these people work for the company that they sold contracts to. Happens in the higher levels of government as well. But I just expect better integrity from the military, right? Like if you're wheeling and dealing with these people, the only thing you need to do with your entire career is say, no, I'm not going to go work for you. Go work for someone else. If you were a PEO, you had so much experience and you made so many valuable contacts that you could get a $200,000, $300,000 job doing fucking nothing at one of these defense tech terms, literally just texting your buddies and saying, hey, check this thing out. That's all you have to do when you get out. You certainly don't have to wheel and deal while you're in to secure a job with a company that you just sold a contract to. Not cool. So moving on, like I was talking about earlier, Palmer Luckey, co-founder of Anduril. So if you haven't heard of Andruil, Anduril, this is like one of the next massive companies. Now they're already massive. These defense tech companies are growing super, super fast. But this is like, the next Raytheon, Boeing, like these monster companies. Boeing, like the people who get to kill whistleblowers whenever they want and nobody gets to do anything about it, apparently. This dude, Palmer Luckey, he likes to show up dressing like an absolute dickhead. He's not tough. He's got no muscles, and he likes to wear, like beach bum clothes and Ray-Bans on his head. And I hate and like that because you don't have to look like you're super squared away anymore to just build one of these defense tech companies. It's just like a lame world where you have a bunch of people wearing suits, shaking each other's hands, going and talking to military personnel and talking, wheeling and dealing, just making sales. Your CEOs, your executives are just salespeople. At this point, it's like, dude, screw it. You can be anybody as long as you're good at tech, you've got a good idea, and you're tenacious, and you can show up looking however the fuck you want. I respect this guy. He's currently teaming up with Meta to transition the military to completely autonomous weapons. So, I hate to say it, and I say this pretty often, but if we start hearing about a Gundam, anybody, maybe send them my way. I would love to mech up. So the next thing I want to talk about is BAE Systems. And I bring this up semi-often because you have these companies like BAE Systems, and they have these massive announcements like BAE Systems wins a $1.2 billion contract. Again, it's just lame. Like these same massive companies win over and over and over. So what they won this time, though, is actually worth note. As we transition into a Space Force, Space War, Gundam wielding future, I hope, we're going to see more things like this happen. Just like I talked about last time on the podcast with China doing something on the dark side of the moon, can't confirm. And now if they are or if they aren't, we're leveraging a project to get to the moon, building a space station there. Like a lot of cool shit is happening with space right now. And I partially blame Elon Musk with SpaceX kind of just making it sexy. And then you also have to acknowledge that Donald Trump making the Space Force is going to trigger some degree of global happening, which it is, where people are investing in space because you don't want to be last. You don't want to be the last country to try to invest in space. And then all the global superpowers are sitting up there owning everything. Okay. So BAE Systems wins a contract for satellite-based missile defense. So pretty cool. This is probably something that you already may have thought was happening, but it isn't really, and it's not really effectively. So the way this is going to work, $1.2 billion is going to go towards satellites that can detect brightness of missile launches. So varying degrees of brightness in missile launches from middle Earth orbit, or MEO. They're going to basically be looking for different degrees of brightness, track it, immediately send that signal to the U.S., and then we can launch our defense protocols. I think that's pretty sick. There's a lot of money going into countermeasures for hypersonic ballistics, and rightly so. You don't have very long to react, so sending a full system into the sky to kind of navigate those waters. Now, here's where I see the future, and I'm going to go off on a little tangent right here. This isn't news. This is what I think. When we get overly invested into space like this, and we have ample opportunity to overcrowd space, we start getting, special operations agents into space. Listen, you can't shoot guns at each other in space, okay? Why? Well, because you're going to start blowing stuff up. And you blow up, the ISS, the International Space Station, you're going to send so much debris into the atmosphere that we're going to have a difficult time sending more things up there. So you can't go into all-out war. There has to be just like a certain, like a paradigm in space, right? Like, yes, we, a Geneva Convention's for space. And wherever they want to hold this convention, I don't care. You're going to have to make an agreement that everyone's killing each other with knives. That's just going to that's going to be how it goes. Okay. So when you have like a war and they're going to try to, tamper with satellites and other things like that, you're going to have soft operators floating around in space, slashing other soft operators who are defending, engineers and scientists. Now, when you get to that point, we're going to have to start inventing different things where you fight in space, potentially spacecraft that can do it. That'd be pretty cool. But here's the thing is we're going to have to go out of middle Earth and lower Earth orbit, and we're going to have to go into outer space, okay? Because we can't really litter outer space. So then once we have platforms that we can basically launch from in outer space, refuel, and go the further distance, maybe stationing on the moon. This is going to happen within my lifetime, okay? Then you have the capacity for larger functioning mechanisms like Gundams, okay? So giant robots that don't have such a significant lift, basically like they don't need as much power because they're not in gravity. They're not in Earth's gravity, okay? So they can fly around easier and they can fight easier. That's a hope. We'll see what happens. If anyone's out there working on it, I'm your guy. So, moving on from my fantasies, the National Guard in Oregon sets the world record. So there's a National Guardsman in Oregon. I'm just going to go through some fucking fluff pieces, some silly stuff. But there's a National Guardsman in Oregon who set the world record for hand release push-ups. I think the real world record that he set was a National Guardsman doing something of international acclaim. Good for you. Way to show that the Nat Guard is still holding it down and has some hitters in there. It's cool to see. Like, the news is really full of Navy SEAL, Green Beret, all that kind of stuff. And it's cool to see someone from the Nat Guard just throwing it down. I appreciate that a lot. Here's a conspiracy. Hilton Honors somehow dropped all Air Force member accounts from all of their books. So if you're in the Air Force, you had a Hilton Honors account. No longer do you. And so you have all these people with status and it's completely disappeared, and Hilton Honors has no idea how to get it back. Now, if you are one of these losers who is not a Marriott Bonvoy member, and you did do Hilton Honors instead, I feel bad for you, one. And two, I feel bad for you again, because that sucks that you lost all your points. Not just the fact that you're doing Hilton instead of Marriott. So I guess just enjoy that. Suck that, nerds. I haven't heard anything else about it, like they're getting people back, because I don't know if they can. That's how they made it seem. And then lastly, I want to talk about something that hits home back at the teams. So there are, well, I wouldn't even call them accusations. It's like valid accusations of racist memes being pushed around in a SEAL team, like a platoon at SEAL Team 4, maybe, on the East Coast. Some racist memes were made about a fellow platoon member, and I want to give a small degree of clarity on this. Okay, so first of all, whatever's going on in your platoon chat, that's not for everybody to see, okay? If you have something that is happening that is against the UCMJ, it is technically your duty to bring that up the chain. That is like your inherent duty. Now, what was going on here is that this guy had his bird pulled. So that's what we call it, having your bird pulled, your trident. He was removed from the SEAL community and then filed against the accusations. So here's the deal, right? You can say whatever you want, and everyone can always say whatever they want. And you can say like, oh, he probably was too scared to speak up while he was in the platoon, and it really mattered to him then. And then whatever. Okay, I have been the point of ridicule before in the teams. Everyone in the teams has. We make memes about each other. We're viciously mean to each other. And listen, if something is overtly awful and racist and it's about you and they send it to you, fucking kick their ass. And if you can't win in a fight against that guy, try. Try, dude. Go fight for yourself. We are Navy SEALs, and you're gonna go tell on each other. Now, this is a personal opinion, but I think we should really focus on settling all things in-house in the military, no matter if you're a SEAL team or an infantry grunt marine team, if you're, infantry army, or if you're just admin army. If you have an issue, this is the military. Square the fuck up, okay? Go glove up, not bare fist. Go glove up, get in the fight, Jim, and fight each other. Please normalize this in the military again. The fact that we don't is embarrassing, because we should be settled. Like we should be solving these problems with aggression. That's what we're for. And if you disagree, it's probably because you're not in the military. If someone says anything to you that really pisses you off in the military, it's not time to tell. It is time to beat ass. And with that, I'm going to close by how the same way I'm going to close for a while now. This August 22nd, this year of 2025, in Reno and Lake Tahoe, so the Reno Tahoe area, myself and a few other SOF veterans and some high-performing endurance athletes are going to be taking on a 220-mile race over 20 mountains with 22 pounds on our backs to physically carry the burden of the 22 veterans who commit suicide every single day. We are doing this to, one, raise awareness, and to two, raise funds for proven solutions that are about compassion, care, and veterans benefits guidance. What we need to do is hyper-focus on the wins that we can win. So if you weren't aware, veteran suicide, PTSD, TBI, they're all very closely linked. The number one cited reason for veteran suicide is PTI, TBSD. TBI, PTSD. The number two cited reason is finance. Finance, okay? And then if you combine that finance with the fact that most marriages end because of finance, the leading reason for divorce in America is finance, you have a lot of service members who are wildly adversely affected, veteran service members, by financial issues. How do we solve that problem? Well, that's an easy fix, because since 1939, we've had the tools and the benefits and the national backing to help veterans transition from civilian life to, from military life to civilian life. That's what we're doing. That's what my nonprofit does, and that's what we're raising awareness to do, to succeed in that mission. It is an easy mission. It's an easy win when you compare it to the difficulties that we face with fixing TBI PTSD. Go take a look. I've got the link in my bio on YouTube, on my bio on Instagram, LinkedIn, and it will be in the description of every single video we put out for the next couple months. I'm Liam Kogan. This is 3 Bravo. Check y'all next time.